blind tasting is a game. It's a game of logic. It's not a game of luck. It's not a game of fear. It's not a game of hope. It's a game of logic. You know, a lot of people, they get emotional with wine. They try to imagine what the wine is. They try to feel what the wine is. But that's all just, you know, that's a game that doesn't work. If you really want to be successful with this, you need to know the rules. You need to know how to find the facts, and you need to have a great, solid conclusion, and you will be right almost every time. Look for the tell once you bring the suspects in. Eliminate the ones that aren't there, and then make your decision and move on. Believe in yourself, trust yourself, game of logic. Why are we all here today? Everybody like wine? So thanks for all coming. Again, my name is Fletcher. I am a master sommelier. I am the executive director of fine wine for Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits in Colorado. I am also one of the founders of the Guild of Sommeliers Education Foundation. I am their cellar master at this point, and I've had a pretty great career over the years. I have 25 years on the floor as a restaurateur, and now I've been with a wholesaler for 18 years. And I've basically dedicated my life to wine, service, and hospitality. And it's been somewhat of an odd journey. And we're going to talk a little bit today about blind tasting. We're going to talk about wine education, and we're going to talk about mentorship. And I think, you know, out of all those things, I've achieved some really great things in my life. But one of the things that I'm actually most proud of, and people note me for, is my mentorship. And I've, you know, I've helped and trained, I think, more master sommeliers and passed the master's exam than anybody, I think, or arguably. People fly in to see me. I fix people. So I became the guy that there was the fixer, and especially for a couple different reasons. I fix people's tasting technique, and basically, you know, we taste wine blind for a couple different reasons, but in our profession, in the sommelier business, we taste wine blind to pass an exam. And there's a lot of games played with blind tasting, because the way we do it, for instance, at the master's exam, you have 6 wines in front of you. You have 25 minutes to identify grape varietal, country of origin, production techniques, vintage, tannin levels, alcohol levels, and things like that. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But there's also the mental side of the game. When you look at everybody looking at you like you're looking at me right now, you can be very introspective, and you can start to get nervous. And if you do that, you're never going to pass that exam, because it's you and the wine, and you have to focus on those wines. And so when people come to me, you know, they might have a different set of, they might not taste acid correctly. They might not be able to gauge tannin. Their perception of oak might be wrong. Their ability to actually choose the correct wine might be a flaw for them. So what I try to do is I work with people and help them. And we'll talk about that. My story, one of my great mentors, I've had a few in my life, but one was named Jim Sandner. And Jim was a great friend of mine. He passed away last year. And Jim was one of those guys. I worked at a place in my mid-career called Krablunik. And Krablunik was a log cabin restaurant with no electricity, gas lights, a wood-burning stove, and dog sleds. And I started working there in the 80s, and I met this guy, Jim Sandner. And Jim was one of these guys that traveled the world. And Jim, he loved me. And he believed in me. Sorry, he passed away last year. Anyway, Jim was a great guy. And Jim was one of those guys that said, "You are special, Jay. You are something. You are, you're." And I go, "I'm something. I am." And he goes, "Dude," he goes, "You got something that I haven't seen anywhere." And so he was a big, big supporter of me. And I'll talk about him a little bit later. But mentorship sometimes can just be, "I believe in you, that you're special, that you're something." And a lot of us, when you think about the restaurant business in itself, it's a bottom level. You think of it as a bottom level job. And I'll talk a little bit about my life and how I got here. But it was, he wanted me to write a book called J. Fletcher, the Unlikely Sommelier. So before we get to the tasting part, I'm going to tell you my personal journey through my life and how I became a master sommelier and became chairman of the Court of Master Sommeliers and started the Guild of Education's, foundation, et cetera. And it wasn't a path that you might have expected. So, when I was a younger man, we actually had, or a young boy, actually, we had a pretty good life. My father was a veterinarian. My mother was an English teacher. We were coming up in the ranks. Dad had his own veterinary business. And then somewhere when I was 11 or 12, Dad started messing around and left us. And so he left my mom with 4 children. And we went from, lower middle class to kind of poor. We were in Madison, Wisconsin. And it was right, not too far after the Vietnam War, so kind of hippie days and whatnot. And so Mom, all she could do was find a job taking care of young children in our house. So I helped Mom with the kids. And so one of the things that I learned from that was nurturing and upbringing. And it's something that I've tried to uphold over the years. So I did that, but at the same time, my father was a pool player. And we had, he was, I think, U.S. Air Force champion, and he was a pretty good player, and we had a 4x8 Brunswick in the basement. And I like to shoot pool, so I made him teach me how to play pool. And so that was my thing when I was in junior high and high school. I shot pool, and I played down in the basement with my friends. And then one year, I went downtown to downtown Madison, and there was a place called Action Billiards. And I went downtown, and I went with my friend Fred Dick, who was my childhood buddy, and he was one of my pool playing buddies. And I think we're 14 years old or something like that. And we beat these college kids out of $3. And the guy that owned the place, his name is Jerry Bryseth. And Jerry Bryseth's in the Billiard Hall of Fame now for one of the greatest teaching professionals in the country. And Jerry just laughed his ass off. He goes, "These kids beat you guys out of your money." And he just thought it was the most funny thing. So I ended up started going downtown and playing pool in the big leagues. And, back then, we're talking in the 70s here, early 70s, and the golden years of pool. And so he opened a pool hall next door called Q-Neek Billiards, which was a modern pool hall that had like 26 4.5 by 9 gold crowns. It had a billiard table, that's a table with no pockets. It had a snooker table, that's a game they play in England. They had a bar table, that's what you see in a bar, a little short box. They had other things. So I started working for him as basically I would vacuum the place, vacuum the tables, and then I would fix cues. He taught me how to, do cues. So he was actually one of my early mentors as well, and he taught me how to play at a fairly high level. So I hung out there most of my years of high school, and I skipped school most of the time. I was truant. I barely graduated high school. My grades were C's and D's, and I flunked gym. Yeah, it's hard to flunk gym, but I flunked gym. I still occasionally have dreams where I don't graduate from high school, right? So I basically had this misspent youth of playing pool, and of course I didn't have any money either, so I was like a scrapper, and I used to play in the cheesy bars, and you could drink in Wisconsin at 18, so we were drinking at 16 and whatnot. But I really focused on playing pool, but at the same time I had this love for the outdoors. And when I graduated high school, I really didn't have a path, so 4 of us we had one of our fathers drive us to the Canadian border. And we paddled in the wilderness of Ontario for 69 days. And that was a life changer to me, because here this young kid that's been out on a couple day trips. When you go up to Ontario, we paddled almost 400 miles in wilderness area. I got worked. I mean, our favorite word was, "This is insane." And we had to carry 30 days worth of food. We had 200 pounds of food. You'd paddle for 6-8 hours a day. You'd have to carry this stuff on portages. I don't know if you guys know what a portage is. It's basically a path. So you got a 75-pound canoe, plus a couple hundred pounds of food, plus all your gear. And you might have to haul it over a trail of a half a mile with mosquitoes, black flies, deer flies, ticks, moose, bear, all these crazy things, right? So when I came back after that trip, that summer when I graduated from high school, I was changed. I was different. I was tough. I learned how to suffer. As a matter of fact, when we were out something like 6 weeks, and we were up 100 miles north of the Canadian border, north of Quetico Park, if you know where that is, and we had $5 left. And we didn't want to ask our parents for any money, so we bought 4 pounds of wheat meal, 4 pounds of cornmeal, 4 pounds of oatmeal, 2 pounds of sugar, a 3-pound block of dates, and a pack of rolling tobacco, and lived on that for 2 weeks. So you could have corn mush, wheat mush, or oat mush, or make pancakes out of those and put sugar on it. So you learn to, starve, basically. And fishing, you could fish, but you were on the move. We were paddling 8 hours a day, and we paddled 100 miles in less than 2 weeks, which is a big stretch of the canoe. When I came back, I got my first job at a place called the Portobello. And my actually second mentor here, after Jerry taught me how to play pool, was this guy named Terrence. And I got a job in an Italian restaurant as a busboy. And that's what my job was, because if you don't have any skill, you're either a laborer or a busboy. And I became a busboy, and he saw something in me, and he taught me how to tend bar. And I was a service bartender. But in hindsight, this is back in the 70s, we had 5 different tap beers going, right? This is 1974. We had 75. We had tap beers. We had everything was made with jiggers. We fresh squeezed lime juice, lemon juice, grapefruit juice. Everything was done with a recipe. We had all the classic cocktails. He made me remember everything with flashcards. And not knowing this was setting me up for the master's exam much later in life. And when you think about the cult cocktail movement, what's going on right now, or has been for the last 10 years, he was doing it all the way back there into 1975. So I worked at a bar at the bar and bussing tables that winter, but then I got wanderlust again. And I had never seen the ocean. So I decided that I was going to hitchhike down to Panama City, Florida, and see the ocean from Wisconsin. Now, a white boy from Wisconsin that's never seen the beach, that was pretty cool when I went down to the white sand beach and burned my whole face off in one day, right? Nobody even heard of sunscreen. I'd never heard of sunscreen before. And then, I was there and I decided, my father had moved to upstate New York. So I thought, I'll just hitchhike up to Buffalo, New York. So I hitchhiked from Miami or from Fort Lauderdale all the way up to Buffalo. Almost got killed. Well, I broke away from some guys that were in a hotel that were going to have their way with me. It was a pretty damn traumatic little trip for me. And so I learned a little bit about survival there, and I learned a little bit about predators, and I learned a little bit about hunger again, and I learned a little bit about Lonely Road and being alone and being by myself. And so I came back to Wisconsin again, and I got a job, again, tending bar and working in a restaurant. And so that went for a couple months, but I didn't like that, so I finally got my first job in a fine dining restaurant. So I worked at this place called the Spring Green, and it was a fine dining restaurant in Spring Green, Wisconsin. It was built by Frank Lloyd Wright. And that's where I first tasted my first Coquille Saint-Jacques. Fine dining, and I go, dude, I like food. I like food. And, we ate food. My mother was pretty good cook, but not, she was not fancy. And all of a sudden I realized for some reason, I don't know, maybe I have some kind of a weird palate or something, but I realized I really like good food. And so that was kind of my first thing, but I didn't really like it in Spring Green. And one of my friends, Dave Klagas, his name was Chipmunk, and Chipmunk was also a pool player, and he could shoot the eyes off the ball. This guy was super, super talented. And he says to me, Jay, let's go down to Tucson and hustle pool. And I said, okay. So I quit my job, I sold everything I had, put it in a backpack, got on a bus, and I took a bus from Madison, Wisconsin to Tucson, Arizona. It took me 2 full days in a Greyhound bus. And if you've ever been in the Grey Dog, in the back of a Grey Dog for 2 days, you see some real fine fellas in those buses. So we bought a car down there. We bought a 1967 Buick Skylark, which is a beautiful car, from this lady for $300. And it was a sweetheart of a rig, right? We were all proud. And so we played every single major city in the South. And I started with $500, and I made it 4 months. So we played Phoenix, we played Tucson, we played Los Angeles, we played San Francisco, back to Tucson, we played Houston, Galveston, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, all the way to Miami, around the horn to Miami, and then we ended up like busting out. Because when gamblers run out of money, you're screwed because you don't have no more money. So anyway, I run out of money and I limp back to Wisconsin with the only thing I had left was my share of the car, which Dave righteously gave me $125 for it. If you look for that car right now, it's worth a lot of money, right? It was a pretty cool car. Anyway, this time I got a job in a Chinese restaurant called the Cathay House. And the Cathay House, I learned how to make Mai Tais and Blue Hawaiis and all that stuff. So I kind of got into my mixology a little bit. And I worked for this guy named UK Lowe. And UK Lowe liked me too. And he wanted to train me. I was the only white guy there. And he wanted to train me as a Chinese chef. He wanted me in the family business. But I had to get out of Madison. So this time I really got rid of everything. And I bought a new backpack. And I hitchhiked north to the northern Wisconsin. And I walked across northern Wisconsin by myself with a backpack in late May, which was a beating, and it was super cold. And I ended up hitchhiking to Grand Marais, Minnesota, which was right on Lake Superior, and I got a job planting trees for the Forest Service. And then all of a sudden I go, this is who I am. I'm a Forest Service guy. I'm gonna be a Forest Service guy, and I'm gonna plant trees, and I'm out there, and this is a great life. Well, that lasted 2 months, and I didn't have a job. And so one of my friends lived in Aspen, Colorado, and he said, hey, why, he was writing me letters, and I go, well, I think I'll go to Aspen. So I hitchhiked from Grand Marais, Minnesota, through North Dakota. By the way, North Dakota, it took me 2 days to get across North Dakota. Nobody would pick me up. I basically walked across North Dakota, and it's a big state. Think about that, 2 days to get across one state. And then I hitchhiked through Yellowstone Park. Now, that was another great lesson in my life. You can't walk through Yellowstone Park in late May, early June, because I got stuck in neck-deep snow. I run into all sorts of animals. And so I basically walked through Yellowstone Park, and I hitchhiked into Aspen June 1st, 1978, and I've been there ever since, all right? So I got to Aspen, and I didn't have any skill, and I could still shoot pool a little bit, but I got into the trades, and I started working in trades. I worked in the lumber yard, and then I became a concrete foreman. So then I thought, I'm going to be a trades guy. I'm a tradesman now, and I built concrete foundations. I actually worked as a plumber for a while, electrician, and I go, yeah, this is hard. This is man's work. Well, then I blew my knee out. I blew my right knee out skiing, and my next big lesson in life was agony. Back in the day when you had an anterior cruciate ligament go out, they did a patella tendon transplant, but they put you in a cast from your hip to your ankle for 3 months. And so I couldn't work. And in the time being, I started playing pool again on one leg because I had a cast out. And something happened with my balance, and I was a little bit more mature. And all of a sudden, I started to shoot the eyes off the ball. And I started playing real good again. And I started winning a lot of money. And there was a guy in town that it turned out he had a marijuana smuggling business, and he had a lot of money. Well, I took him one night for $10,000. I had $500 in my pocket. I paid him for 20 hours, and I walked home with $10,000. And I'd never seen that kind of money in my life. And I came home to the boys at this apartment. I pulled out my horse roll. I go, anybody want to go out to dinner? And I was like fat, And so I started playing pool again, and I didn't work for a year. And in the meantime, I got to play the world champion, Larry Lascotti. I played him for 2 days straight. This guy flew in, the 3-time world champion, and I played him for 2 days and held my own. And I played on the road for a year. And now, a funny story. I played for a year without working, and I did pretty well. 35 years ago was the last time I was here in LA. And when I came here to play pool. And I came here 35 years ago, and I haven't been back, and I went to LA Billiards. And I ran into a guy in the afternoon, and I started playing him $10 a game 9-ball. And I got him stuck, meaning that I started winning right off the bat. And he thought he had a golf game that afternoon, and I think he was irritated, because, so I played him for 5 hours, and we broke even. And it turned out this guy's name was Ron Rosas, the best player in all of Los Angeles, and I just held him for 5 hours and broke even. So I'm shooting pretty good when you consider this is a pretty damn big city, and I'm holding my own with Ron Rosas, right? So that night I go back in, and there's an older guy playing pool with me, and I start playing this straight pool with him. And it was one of those things where, like, the gods said no. and everything started going wrong. I had a little piece of chalk, it scratched. I got corner hooked here and there. Everything went bad, and I lost about $1,000. Now, a gambler like me, I've been going for a year. I might have had $3,000 or $4,000 left in my name. I lose 1,000 plus to this guy. I go to Phoenix, I lose. And then I go back to Aspen, I lose, and I'm broke. So what do I end up doing? Getting a job at the French restaurant. Bing, okay? So I got a job at the French restaurant, and that changed my life. And I look back at it, and I go, wow, if I would have beat that guy, maybe I still would have been a bum in a pool hall. But now I wear a fancy suit and fancy shoes, and I'm up here talking to you. Because I went to that place, and there was a guy, and I was back to being a busboy again. So I'm scrubbing the toilets, and I'm doing everything else, and here's this fancy wine guy, and he didn't do anything but bullshit and drink. And I went, I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy. Now, up to this point, I didn't have a very high opinion of my intelligence. My penmanship was poor. My school studies were poor. The books that I read were not very deep. And so I started to educate myself on wine and service. I started reading every service book I could read. I read every wine book I could read. And I ended up getting a job at this other restaurant called Krablunik later that had 16 wines on the wine list, and I brought it up to 300 selections. And so I kept taking and reading everything I could about wine. And in 1993, I saw an ad in the paper for the Court of Master Sommeliers. And it said, introductory class for the Court of Master Sommeliers. And my friend at the time was Damon Ornowski, and Damon's a Master Sommelier right now himself. And he worked at a different restaurant, and I said, Damon, let's take this wine class. He says, cool, man. So we signed up for this class, and we didn't know anybody, we didn't know a thing about the Court of Master Sommeliers, right? And we were just fascinated. I think Fred Dame was there, Ira Harmon was there, Doug Frost was there, and this is 1993, and I was just blown away. I go, man, these guys are so cool. But at that time, I had no inkling that I would even try to become them or be someone like them, but I just thought it was really, really great. So I took this class, and I was really wholly into it, and then that year, they used to have a class called the Sterling School of Service and Hospitality. And the Sterling School was run by Evan Goldston and Fred Dame, and Eddie Osterland, who was the first American master, and they did this little class up in Sterling, up in Napa, and we took a 5-day class, and I had a bunch of my friends, and we drank up, and we had a really good time, and that was the first time I ever met Fred Dame. As a matter of fact, we were late for the class and kind of drunk, and he pulled us up for the class and called us out in front of everybody. It was kind of embarrassing, but I learned to stay away from Fred a little bit there. And anyway, we took the Sterling School of Service and Hospitality, and I did pretty well on that. They had a test and everything. I think I took the second score in the class, and that was pretty cool. So I signed up for the advanced exam the next year, the Court of Master Sommelier advanced exam, and I studied as hard as I could. I just read wine books night and day and educated myself, and I took the advanced class in Vail in 1994, and I passed it on my first time. And that was the first time I ever thought I could I went, wow, I got that. At 60%, I only need another 15% to pass the Masters. It's a 75% pass rate at the Masters. I go, I got this. I can do this. So I bared down, and I read books, and I studied as hard as I could, and I went to San Francisco in the spring of 1995 with Damon. And my friend Jim Sander, who was, again, one of my great mentors that I knew before, he knew Larry Stone because Larry Stone worked at Charlie Trotter in Chicago. And he said, he was going to get us a lunch reservation at Rubicon, and Larry was going to come over and say hi to us, right? Now, Larry and I are really good friends now, but when Larry first came over, I was going, Larry Stone, the great sommelier. Larry Stone's waiting on us, and Larry had this beautiful style where he grabbed the butt of the bottle and he tasted every wine carefully. And so Damon and I had lunch with Larry Stone, and we went and took our master's exam. Well, I choked like a dog. I am a pretty good natural taster. I sat down in front of these guys. I looked at everybody in the eye, and I just went down the wormhole. I became so self-conscious, I almost fainted, and I couldn't taste anything. And I just pooched it so bad. And I went into the service exam, and I dropped the tray. First thing I did is drop the whole tray of champagne glasses, right? Everybody's just going like, dude. This other guy runs over, and I'm like, oh. And the theory exam, now at the master's exam, okay, so you got 6 wines blind, you got to get 75% of the points. Basically, you got to get almost all of them right to pass. The theory exam is almost, 150 questions on any fermented beverage in the world, right? So and then the service exam, you have to decant, you have to You have to open champagne at cigar service. Back then we had cigar service. We had to study cigars and everything like that. So anyway, I sucked in everything really bad, right? I mean, I imploded, and I felt so bad for myself. And they used to give you feedback. And at the time, Barry Larvin was the chairman of the Court of Masters, a British guy. And his feedback to me was, this is almost verbatim, this program's not for you. Don't say anything bad about anybody. Don't say anything bad about any of the masters. So basically, quit the program and don't badmouth anybody. You know, basically, hit the door and don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you goodbye, right? You're out of here, right? And I went, well, really? I go, really? I go, I don't think so. I don't think so. So I bared down. I bared down as hard as I could, and I studied for another straight year. And I went back to Vegas in 1996, the spring of '96. And that year, Damon, the year before that, Damon had passed the tasting portion. So I went in there and I passed theory. And actually, Barry Larvin was on my panel. And I had a hard time looking at him because, you know, when you're taking theory, there's 3 people on a panel and you're looking right at him. And I was feeling like, you know, self-conscious again. So every time they asked me a question, I'd look up at the ceiling. And so I wouldn't look at him. So I'd get my own space here. And when I left the room, Ira Harmon was in there, and Barry Larvin looked at him and he said, are all the correct answers written on the ceiling? You know, so I had a pretty good test there. I failed service by a few points, and I actually passed the blind tasting, but I had 5 minutes left and changed one of my wines. From what I understand, I had called a wine a Saint-Emilion, and I changed it to Chinon, which is also Cabernet Franc, and failed myself. And then Fred mocked me after that, you know, and said, oh, nice Bordeaux, Fletch. You know, it's like, dude, you know, so it was very painful. So I decided that I wasn't going to take the exam anymore, and I was going to train for the Leadville 100 bicycle race. So I actually rode the Leadville 100 bicycle race, which is 10,000 feet of vertical climbing, above 10,000 feet, 100 miles plus. And I wanted to work on my physical because it's all about mind, body, and soul with this stuff, right? And my, again, mentor, Jim Sanders, says, Jay, and he says, I've got these miles that are expiring, and I need you to take this exam in London. And I said, no, not going to do it. I was scared. I'd never been overseas. I was afraid to fail again. And I said, nope, not going to do it. I'm going to train for this race. He says, you know, you should probably do this, Jay. It's probably a good thing for you. And I go, nope, not going to do it. And this is before cell phones. This is before internet. You know, you had to buy books and read them, et cetera. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And he says, well, call me back. And so I got this place in Aspen where I climb up and I sit cross-legged and think. And I thought about it, and I go, you're a loser and a quitter. And opportunity only comes once. And I said to myself, you know, so I called him up. I said, Jim, I'm going to do it. So he hooked me up, got me airfare to London. And I said to myself, you know, the 2 previous times I took the master's exam, I was a coward, and I sat in my room, and I was afraid of my own shadow. So I wrote on a notebook, confidence is all, practice makes perfect, believe in yourself. And I read it 3 or 4 times every single day. Because if you're not your own friend, who is? If you are against yourself in life, who is with you? If you can't back your own self up, who's going to be your friend? And I read this stuff, and I said, I'm not going to be a coward in this hotel room. And I went there, and I passed the master's exam, and I became the 30th American to do so. And it was a great tribulation for me, for my family, and for everyone else. It changed my life. And one of the reasons I did it is because of my little girls. I have 2 little girls, and I did it for them. Because I had a little picture in my pocket, and every time I got to be cowardly, I looked at the picture, and I said, I can do this for them. Funny story. I was at, so Jim, who hooked me up with all this stuff, he loved this restaurant, Claridge's. You guys know the restaurant Claridge's, right? Claridge's is one of the great hotels in all of London. And Claridge's is super, super stiff. I mean, this place is Brit all the way, pinstripe suits. You know, it's very, 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 very formal and very tight. He says, Fletch, he says, what you're going to do, you go in there, you have a bottle of champagne, you sit in a lounge, you peruse the menu, and then you're going to have dinner, and it's all on me, so don't worry about it. You're going to have some great wine and everything, but the things, you got to have a cigar. They got the greatest Havana cigars, and they got the greatest cheese card. So when it's all said and done, you're going to have a port, and you're going to have a cigar. Well, the maitre d' at the time and the sommelier was in a tuxedo, and everybody was white gloves and tuxedo. And they kind of treated us like American tourists, my wife and I at the time, and just went poo-pooed us. And they didn't give us the greatest service. And when I went to the bathroom before the port, my wife said to the sommelier that I had just passed the master's exam. I walked back into the dining room. This guy weighed about 300 pounds. And he was a big, big guy in a tuxedo. And he drops to his knees and bows to me in the middle of Claridge's. And he goes, Master Fletcher, I did not know. I am so sorry. And I just about puked. I just went, are you kidding me? This guy's bowing to me at Claridge's. And anyway, so that's basically my story of passing the master's exam. So since that, I've been a judge and a tester for the court for years and years and years, and I watch people go down hard, right? I've been like a master's judge and an advanced judge, and I watch students blind taste, and so because of that, I became, like, again, the guy that fixes people. And because of the fact that another little scenario there, my ex-wife had substance abuse problems, and I basically raised my $2 by myself. So again, nurturing, they call me Papa Fletch because I take care of people and I help people. So over the years, I've had, like I say, 30 different masters familiar sit at my house. And I have students that come by every week. And I'm training 6 or 8 advanced students right now, multiple masters. I have people fly into my house and taste wine with me. And basically what I do is, I give them my philosophy of life, of health and happiness and unity, with exercise, diet, spiritual wholeness, happiness, all those things that I learned in my life, taking a beating out there. By the way, I've also had 7 reconstructive surgeries. I've blown both my knees out. I've lost my 2 best friends to avalanches, my 2 best friends. I lost one in '84 and one in 2000, so emotional heartbreak. I crashed my bike at 50 miles an hour coming down Independence Pass, shattered my arm, broke my shoulder, broke all my ribs. I mean, I've been a mess, but I'm happy. And I love wine and I love food. And so I have these stories that I tell people and I go, look, you could do it, and I fix them. So now we got over that story. Now I'm an older guy and I'm doing pretty well and we're doing stuff with Jason, but we're gonna talk about blind tasting. So my opinion of blind tasting is, like, we've all gone through the deductive tasting thing, right? So the way I look at blind tasting, like a lot of people, when we do our tests, we have 4 minutes and 10 seconds to break the wine down, right? So when you think about that, that's not much time to look at this wine, break it down, and think. So most of the people that I deal with, they might take 3.5 minutes to break the wine down, and they have 30 seconds to conclude. My idea is to bring all the facts in 2 minutes, and then have 2 minutes to think. And so I look at it as a game of logic. Now, there's 2 kinds of blind tasters in the world, right? There's the instinctual taster. Fred Dame's a total instinctual taster. He does not use, as much as he will tell you, or even I do deductive tasting with Fred all the time, he does not taste deductively. Fred just goes, but both on, dude. 84. Yeah, 84. He just does that, right? But most of us don't do that, right? And I certainly don't. So, but what I try to do is be instinctual, but I'm deductive. And the thing is, there's all these things that can, we all want to be right. We're afraid to be wrong. We're scared to be wrong. We want to be right. We're afraid to look stupid. We're afraid, but this is a really, really, really hard game. So the way I look at it, really, it's a game of logic, a pure game of logic. And so what you try to do is take as many clues out of this glass of wine as possible, as quickly as possible. Now, you still have to have knowledge behind it. You have to know the inherent qualities of certain grapes, right? You have to know what Chenin Blanc tastes like, or Chablis tastes like, or Sancerre tastes like, to tell the difference. They're similar, but they're similar but the same. But every wine has a tell. Every wine's got a clue that tells you what it is. And if you're patient, it will come to you. So when you sit there, and if you think that everyone's looking at you, you're thinking about the wrong game. And I correlate this a lot of times with my pool playing. Because, when you go into a pool hall and you're gambling with somebody, nobody likes you. Nobody likes you. They all hate you. And there's a pretty girl over there in the corner. There's the guy with the money over there. There's the guy that wants to kill you over here, right? And it's not a game of tennis. We're not hitting balls back and forth. But if I think about the girl, the money, or the guy, I'm taking my eye off the ball. I'm missing, right? I'm missing shots. So that's a loser right there. You don't do that. I'm only to focus on the ball that I'm shooting. And that's what blind tasting is about. If you think about what I think, if you think about passing or failing, if you think about what's going to happen to your life, you're going to lose. And this is a game of logic. So what we do is, the deductive tasting method. And basically, when we look at a wine, there's color clues. Now, if you take a look at this wine we're looking at right now, it's yellow, right? So wine juice is clear, right? So all wine juice is clear. You guys know that, right? The skins are the ones that give it the color. So the only reason this wine has color is one of three things. A, it could be oxidized. If I leave this out or if it gets old, an apple turns brown on the counter, right? It oxidizes. Things turn, guacamole turns brown pretty darn quick, right? So oxidation is going to make things turn brown. Oak barrels will make things turn brown. Why? Because they char the stays. The caramelized sugar comes through. I mean, what's sap? It's sugar, right? They char it with a blowtorch. The sugar comes out. You put it in a barrel. It's going to stain the wine, right? Or skin contact. If we macerate the grapes for a certain period of time, they're going to pull a little color out of there, right? Certain wines have certain colors. So I can take a look at this yellow wine here and say, A, it's got skin contact. B, it has oxidation. C, it's seen in oak barrel. Or D, 2, 3, or all of the above. But I don't know that yet because I'm just looking at it, right? So I look at that and I can deduce that. Now, if this was cloudy or mucky, I could also say, but maybe this is a filtered wine or something like that, right? Now, viscosity is really, really important. And people talk about viscosity. And viscosity is basically the tears that come down to the sides of the glass, right? And the slower and more thick the legs are, it correlates to capillary action with water and alcohol, the higher, theoretically, the alcohol will be. Now, this is an inexact science because of the fact that this glass could be washed in a weird way or there could be a film on it, but it's something to look at. Now, some people swirl the glass around. I tip it right up to my thumb every single time, or my finger, and I look at the semicircle every single time the same. For me, I want to do everything very succinctly and the same every single time. So when I look at this, I can watch this thing crack and fall, and I can say to myself, you know, that's looking like the light's a little bit weirder, but it looks like about 13 to me. And if you keep doing this, you can go, okay, I can see this alcohol. And a lot of people, if you cannot gauge alcohol to the point, you're never going to be a great taster, ever. You must be able to break alcohol down to the point. You must be able to take acid to the, to a level and tannin to a level. And those are the fundamentals of blind tasting. And it's all to me about structure. It's like, how tart is this? How much sugar is in this? How much oak is it seen? So I'm going to look at this wine. And again, it's a little hard up here, but I'm going to say this is about, medium plus alcohol, maybe about 13%. Then I'm done. I don't want to waste a lot of time here. And then when I smell the wine, I do something a little bit different than other people do. The first thing I do is I open my eyes really wide, and I go like that. Like I got bad recreational habits in Aspen. But I don't. What I'm basically trying to do is bring alcohol up into my eyes, right? So if I do this, and my eyes, I got white eyes, right? They bleed at 14. They will physically cry at 14% alcohol. I will actually get a tear in my eye if it's 14% alcohol. I'll also get a tear in my eye if it's like so good, Like, oh my God, this is good. But I'm going to feel it right off the bat in my eyes because I want to see, and this actually confirms to me that it's under 14% alcohol. And that's a big clue because wines of the New World are oftentimes over 14% and wines from the Old World. And for you that aren't, trained tasters, Old World is Europe, right? It's Europe. It's places that they've made wine for thousands of years. It's colder there. I think Chicago has the same latitude as lower Italy. You would think it would be, Mediterranean kind of thing, right? As Rome, I think. So, I mean, Europe's much farther north than you would think. And so it's actually a cooler climate. It's really the Gulf Stream that keeps it warm. And we'll see what happens in the future here. But bottom line is the wines of Europe are usually lower in alcohol, higher in acidity. And the wines from America, New Zealand, Argentina, Chile are usually a little warmer in alcohol and with more oak and more fruit forward and usually a little bit cleaner. So we have to decide where this wine's coming from. So I'm going to feel it right off the bat, and then I'm just going to smell it, and I want to be instinctual for just a second. I want to go, what does this remind me of? And to me, this is almost like a little bit like Lemon Pledge. It's got kind of a fakey, polished, kind of weird smell to it, right? But then I want to be succinct, right? Now, I train a lot of people. And I fix them, right? The first guy that I fixed, I think, was George Miliotos. George didn't pass the Masters. George is a great master. George is fantastic, but he had problems tasting, and he flew into Aspen. I spent 2 days with him. He passed. And Michael Jordan came in, did the same thing. He took it 4 or 5 times, worked 2 days with me, passed. And I don't know what I did. I fixed their head, I think. I got them thinking, I changed something, and they passed. And since then, I burned through a lot. Now, I don't do this for money. I do it all for free because I came from nothing. I slept in the dirt. I hitchhiked. I didn't eat. And the Court of Master Sommeliers changed my life and made my life great. And so I feel like you have to pay it forward and you have to give back. So I help as many people as I possibly can. And I actually am quite proud when I see my students get great places. Bobby Stuckey, Richard Betts, Sabato Sagaria, to watch these guys go from like bar managers to great people and great minds. Dustin Wilson, Brian McClintock, you saw the Saw movie. Those guys didn't train in San Francisco. They worked with me for 3 years. They lived in Aspen with me, and they sat in my living room for years, And I worked with those guys, and I beat it into their heads, to get it right. And again, it's a game of logic. And if you don't get the tannin right, I will. If you get Syrah and you call it Malbec, I will give you Malbec again and again until you get it right. And there's certain grapes that are similar. So you have to go, what's the difference? So again, back to my thing, I like to do it in the same order. So I go fruit, earth, wood, flower, spices, herbs. And I just do it real quick. So like this wine, I pick it up and I go, what is the fruit? And the fruit to me here is, this is peach, this is apricot, this is yellow pear, this is honeydew melon. There's a hint of tangerine here. And it's all kind of ripe to me. It's not sour at all. And then I look for earth. On this particular model, I'm getting kind of a rocky, ozone-y kind of smell, maybe a little bit of a salinity here. There's kind of a sea spray-y kind of a smell to it. And then the next thing I look for wood, vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg. Now in this wine, there's a tint of vanilla here. And I'm not, I would have to ask myself, is this seen in oak barrel or is it seen lees contact? Now lees contact will fool you, and so will sulfur. So lees contact smell like bread dosed yeast, beer, stale beer, right? And you smell it, got kind of a little stale beer smell to it, right? So I'm thinking lees contact here on this guy. And then I go fruit, earth, wood, and I go flowers. Well, it's actually fairly floral. I get kind of a lemon blossom, honeysuckle kind of smell to it. It's lifted, but not like in my face. I'm not thinking this is one of the most floral varieties in the world. And then I go spices, maybe a little ginger, maybe a little bit of, like a lemongrass thing going on, but not overly spicy. And then I go for herbs on this. And to me, I've been, just kind of a little bit of maybe damp chervil or marjoram here, but nothing, like in your face green, right? You guys agree? You can smell anything else there? Am I missing something here? Did I get it wrong? I don't know. So that's kind of what I do is I smell it, but I want to be really succinct because people wander all over the place and they burn the clock. If you guys are students doing this, right, they're going to burn the clock off and then they go, oh, shit, it's foofery. They just pick something, right? And I kind of look at it like I'm the homicide investigator trying to convict a murder on circumstantial evidence, right? So I want to bring all the clues. Now I see these other guys, they get one clue. They go, oh, I smell iron, and he's off with his knife to hunt the grizzly bear, right? He's like, I go, wait a minute. I'm working with one guy right now, and he just takes a clue and starts running with it. I go, no, dude. That's not your job. You don't think while you're smelling. You just gather the facts and put them in a pile over there. Just, because if you start to conclude on what this is on the nose alone, that's what we call the light bulb effect. You go, oh, maybe this is German Riesling. And all of a sudden we're making that up. No, I got Slade, I've got apricot, I've got red Slade. This is, this is Erbacher Markerbrand. This is, you can go down the wrong path. So what you want to do is keep your mind completely open and only gather the facts. Just gather the facts and put them in a pile and don't think about what it is yet, right? When I go to the palate, I'm a big structure freak. I think that structure is one of the most important things to hang your hat on because it doesn't change, and most wines have tells. There's certain wines that are very acidic. There are certain wines that are flat. There's certain wines that are floral. There's certain wines that are bitter. And if you know these things, you can sort them. So I want to go, and I'm going to do structure twice. Now, also, you see wine guys, they're swishers, right? You ever see a swisher? I don't like that because I think that alcohol and acid kills your mouth. So what I do is I only do little things. So first of all, I'm going to see if this wine's got any sugar in it, right? And so you taste sugar with the tip of your tongue. Now, I used to stick my tongue in the glass, but I realized that wasn't really that cool. So after a couple of years, I realized you could actually put it in your mouth. And I just put drops in the tip of my tongue. Just drops. And I asked myself, is there any residual sugar in this? And this one here, you kind of wonder if maybe there isn't just a little titch of RS here. But it's not sweet. I'm going to call this a dry wine, but it's one of those where I might kind of half guess it because it seems like, to me, maybe a really undefined amount, a little bit of sugar in this wine, but I'm going to call it a dry wine. So I'm going to say this wine's dry. Then I'm going to ask about myself, how tart is this wine, right? And this is one of the great flaws that tasters have. They can't figure out how tart a wine is. How tart is it? What's the difference between tart level? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drape this on my tongue and just hold my tongue up off the floor of my mouth. I'm going to hold it up like this, and I'm going to say, can I talk to you guys and not swallow all my saliva? And, you know, this wine actually is fairly tart. But if you ask yourself, well, how tart is it? Is this high acid? Because if it's high acid, there's only so many grapes that are high acid. White grapes, Chablis, Riesling, Chenin Blanc, Muscadet. There's only so many tart grapes that are up there, right? And you ask yourself, is this the most sour thing you ever put in your mouth? So one of the things that I like to teach my students is to do that and ask yourself, what fruit did you just bite into? Because that's an easy way to correlate it, right? And I go, okay, I think this wine is like medium plus acid. It's almost like a tart, hard peach, right? But it isn't a sour lemon. So it's not up here, it's up here, right? And then alcohol, I've looked for it in my eyes. I've felt it in my eyes. And what I'll do is I'll trap a little bit in the front of my mouth and I'll suck the vapors into my lungs. And if it makes me cough, it's either 14% alcohol or I suck the wine into my lungs. One of the two, right? So, but I cough at 14. Now, there's other guys that like will swallow the wine and gauge how much burn went down, right? But again, alcohol's a very important thing. I'm going to hang my hat on 13 on this guy. All right, I'm thinking it's around 13, right? So then I'm going to go back to what I thought before. I'm going to do the fruit, earth, wood, flower, spices, herb thing, right? The fruit on this thing is a little bit riper. This is ripe peach, ripe apricot. There's tangerine. There's yellow pear here. There's almost a baked apple kind of a thing. The earth is still chalky and rocky. Oak, I got a little trick for oak. So what I'll do is I'll take about a half an ounce and I won't touch it anywhere in my mouth and I'll swallow it really hard. I'll pinch it right here in my throat and then I'll exhale. And if you do that, you'll start to be able to gauge wood like a champ because this wine has none. You'll start to blow vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg if you do that. And you go, oh, this is seeing, you know, maybe 20% new oak or 50% new oak or something like that. But I get no oak on this. You guys think this is seen in an oak barrel? You know, you can always go, well, maybe it's an old barrel. You know, it's old barrel. I told you there was oak there. There was old barrel. Because, you know, old barrels don't, you know, they don't produce any more vanillin, right? And so, you know, fruit, earth, wood, really no oak on here, but there's that creamy phenolic again, right? That lees stirring is there. And then you want to check for that. This wine is seen lees. This is a lees stirred wine. So fruit, earth, wood, flowers, I think those peach blossoms are really coming up. You know, the spices, it's not really spicy. And there's a hint of bitterness on this wine on the back end of it, but it's not totally bitter. This isn't like a radicchio or, you know, or bay leaf or something like that. There's a hint of bitterness, but it's not totally bitter. And then on the back end, it's really not herbal. So I'm going to take all that information and then I'm going to go, okay, what do I got here? What do I got here? I got a medium acid, medium alcohol, unoaked, lees-driven wine that's yellow. And then, as the homicide inspector, I'm going to go, who are my suspects? And who are my suspects, ladies and gentlemen? Shh, what? Chablis. Chablis, okay, Chablis is a good call. Who else? Rhone, Northern Rhone, okay. So, all right, fair enough. What else? Who else could this be? What other wines that are leesy? What are the greatest leesy wines in the world? You guys know? See, that's half the game, right? Knowing who's leesy. So, Northern Rhone is usually got oak, okay? So that's a clue. So you think about it. There's certain wines that see lees, and they are Pinot Grigio, right? These wines that don't have enough structure on their own to stand, and they can't take an oak barrel, right? There's really only 5 typical white grapes that can take oak. Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Marsanne-Roussanne, Viognier, White Chateau Pop, Vieira from Spain. There's a few anomalies out there. There is, you know, occasionally you'll see an oak Chenin Blanc. Some weirdo does oak Chenin, right? It's okay. Occasionally you'll see an oak Gruner, right? You'll see, you know, you'll see some oak varietals that shouldn't be. Like occasionally you'll see an oak Riesling, but typically not. And for our situation, we're a testing group. You're not going to see them because they have to be typical. Right? They have to be typical or we won't test you on them. It's easy to fool somebody on some weird wine, right? You go, aha, I got you on this infidel from Utah, and, you know, and it's like, yeah, I went down hard here on that one. And what I do with my students is they come over to my house and they have 4 wines, And I taste them on 4 wines, and I write down everything they say, and then I tell them, well, you call the acid wrong on this, you missed the oak here, and then when they're done, they bring me 2, and I blind for them. And I'm probably the only master that will do that, because it's humiliating. You know, you go, oh, you got them all wrong. But I've been on a roll lately. I've been getting it pretty good. So I think it keeps my game, and I want to be a good coach, so I want to keep my game high. So I have to train myself, right? So you have to think about this again. Okay, the lazy guys are Pinot Grigio, because they stirred it up. Muscadet, right? Muscadet, Gruner Veltliner from Austria is lazy, and Albarino from Spain. As well as Chablis. Chablis has lazy as well. And Chablis is really chalky. So let's take those guys. We already talked about Northern Rhone. Why it can't be Northern Rhone? It could be because it's kind of blousy like that and fat, but the lack of oak takes me away from there because I must always see a barrel. So then I have to ask myself, what do I know about these guys, these suspects? What do I know about Mr. Pinot Grigio? What is he? Well, he is a pink grape, he or she, right? This Pinot Grigio is a pink mutation of Pinot Noir, and it's got pink skin. So if I were to macerate this, and because there's no oak here and this smells fresh to me, I'm thinking skin contact here, not oxidation. I don't smell any oxidation here. I don't get any oak. So therefore, the only way this wine could be yellow is with skin contact. And if this was Pinot Grigio, it would be gray or pink, not yellow. Second thing about Pinot Grigio, I almost get kind of an orange baby aspirin kind of smell. Now, we all have our tells, and we have this great nose. You know, we're the greatest hunter-gatherers. Supposedly, we can smell more scents than a dog. You know, you think about the human being, we hunted and trapped things our whole, you know, before we became modern man. That was what we lived on, our nose. And for me, when I lived in Canada, in the woods, for almost 70 days, I could smell another man on a lake 5 miles away. You could smell him. And you used your nose. And I became to hear things. I heard high-pitched whistles and things when I got back into the city that I never heard before, because you become attuned again. And the thing is, we don't use our sense of smell, and we don't have a smell vocabulary. So what we do is we taste and smell things, and we say, well, it smells like an apple. It smells like a pear. And we all smell a little bit different, but we have to have our corollary with grapes. So to me, I've got kind of a peachy wine, right? So I think about, you guys know what Gruner Veltliner is? Right? Gruner from Austria, right? And what is Gruner? Gruner's inherent quality is it's slightly herbaceous, right? So it's slightly green. And some people say radish. Some people say jalapeno. Some people just have, it's got a green tint. Now, Sauvignon Blanc's really green as well, right? It smells like cut green grass. It smells like fresh basil, fresh, really cut thyme, right? It's really, really, really green. I'm not getting that here, and this is lazy, right? So Mr. Gruner, or Mrs. Gruner, or Ms. Gruner, or Gruner, you know, we have to be more specific here. They can't be like that. Is going to be a little bit more herbaceous, and you probably won't be yellow, right? Now, Mr. Albarino smells like saline, smells like sea spray, has apricot, has lees. It's thick like this. You think how thick this is, right? Think how thick this is. You put it on your tongue, it tastes like cream, right? So there's certain wines that are really thin, and most Pinot Grigios are thin. This is thick. This is not green. Muscadet, by the way, has almost always got bubbles, and it's tart. It's really tart. This isn't that tart, and it's got too much body. So I like the call on Albarino on this one. And to me, the clue is the yellow color, the leasiness, the peachiness, and indeed, I am so good at this. This is indeed Albarino, ladies and gentlemen. We nutted this one. But basically, that's really the thing. You have to bring in your suspects and bring them in. And this is actually a pretty cool wine. This is organic and biodynamic. This is Vida Cucina Albarino. So this is from Rias Baixas. Okay, so Rias Baixas is in the northwest, turning this way to my east, northwest Spain. So up in the corner of northwest Spain, it's maritime, so we have a lot of humidity and things like this. A lot of these are on, they're grown on like a pergola training system. They're on granite posts above the ground so the wind can get through there. They're not on the ground. You can actually put cover crops and other things through there. This is really the new darling grape for like by the glass. People are really digging this stuff now. It's, this particular wine had 8 days on the skins. That's why we got the color, because it macerated the color out of it. Stainless steel fermented, and then batonnage on the lees to stir it up and get all that leasiness, gives it that creaminess. So a really nice wine. They thought that this wine was actually Riesling before they did tests on it because it has that almost Riesling-like character. But what's to tell for Riesling is oftentimes there's a little bit of petrol in it, right? So if you were thinking this was Riesling, I'm going to look just for any kind of petrol, gassy, kind of plasticky, plasticine thing, and I don't get that here. Plus, it's not hard enough. Plus, there's not enough sugar in it. And even if it was dry style or from Australia, it'd be more austere. So again, a lot of this is just to taste things and put it in the data bank and go forward with it. So Albarino, pretty fun wine. Now the second wine here, I'm not going to taste you blind, but one of the things that when I worked at this restaurant, Charlemagne, in 1982. And prior to 1982, my experience with wine was Mateus and Lancers, right? You guys ever had that? So when I had a date, I'd get a bottle of Lancers or Mateus, and I'd take her on a picnic. Yeah, I got that ceramic bottle of sweet Portuguese rosé. I was a baller with my Lancers or my Mateus, and I thought that was pretty cool. And so here after my pool career, fell flat on my face and I was busted out and I'm working in this French restaurant, I picked up a bottle of Joseph Drouin Puligny Montrachet. And I put that in my mouth, and just like food, it was like a revelation. It was like, wow, this is the greatest thing I have ever tasted. I just went, this is fantastic. And then I told you the wine guy that I wanted to be. Again, I was cleaning the toilets, and this guy was schmoozing. He had a nice suit on. He was cruising around, and making all the money. And I said, well, why can't I be that guy? And it was really the first time I had a path. I just said, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And again, when I started to read, it turned out that I had this unbelievable memory, and I could suck print. I could read things and remember it. And so I just burned through books. And I just kept putting it in and reading and basically self-educated myself through this whole program. And again, when I passed that master's exam, people go, who's this guy and what? And I had a few people like, I've talked about my mentors, Jim Sandner, who really, really believed in me and helped me. Jeff Johnson, who helped me with the wine cellar and believed in me again. And then, I met Fred Dame the first time at the Sterling School, and then I met him. He was one of my judges at my advanced exam. Now, Fred likes to say that, I'm one of his finest students that he ever trained. Fred says that a lot. He's the finest students I ever trained. Well, in reality, Fred never trained me once. Fred never tasted a glass of wine with me. Fred never taught me about service, but Fred believed in me. And Fred wrote an article and said that I was one of the best young sommeliers in America. And when I took my master's exam in London, Fred sent me a case of wine to my hotel room to blind taste. And I went, Fred sent me wine. And it changed me, and it was crazy. And I was, and he said to me, and when I passed the master's exam, he said, Jay, he says, it's a great thing that you passed the master's exam, but you're not a true master until you pass somebody underneath you. And I thought that was going to be Bobby Stuckey. I trained Bobby Stuckey for years. Now, Bobby Stuckey was the master sommelier at the Little Nell, and then he became the master sommelier, or he wasn't a master at the time, he became the sommelier at the French Laundry. Of course, now Bobby's a very famous guy. He's won multiple James Beard Awards, and he has multiple restaurants, and he's super, super famous. And anyway, Bobby had a hard time passing blind tasting. So he took the exam 7 times. So he bled me hard. I cried for him so many. I just couldn't believe that, my first time as a master examiner, I thought he was going to pass, and he had to restart. But he stuck through it, and he became one of the greatest soms. It was actually Richard Betts, who was the first actually guy underneath me that I got through the program, or helped get through the program, because they have to do the wine themselves. And since that, it's been a great run. I had 10 in a row for a while, one every year for 10 plus years. I've been working on some guys now, but the bottom line has been really, really rewarding for me. But Fred, although he wasn't actually a trainer to me, helped me with so many things later in life. He gave me gigs, he gave me teaching assignments, he helped me with so many things that, I'll never forget that. And I'm really, really loyal, and I'm really, really old school. So Puligny Montrachet was the first wine that I ever fell in love with. It was the first French wine that I ever remember. And if you smell this wine, it's totally different, right? So if we do the pattern again, if we just smell it, the first thing that I'm getting on this is a little bit of reductivity, There's a little whiff of either sulfur or reduction. And reduction, of course, is from oxidized winemaking. And then I get a strong sense of minerality out of this wine. I get a huge amount of chalk on this wine. And we know what it is, right? This is the greatest place in the world for Chardonnay. This is Puligny-Montrachet. This is, the little town of Puligny, the great vineyard of Le Montrachet is right above the hill. It's amazing. I don't know if you've ever been there. But, Le Montrachet is the greatest vineyard of Chardonnay. And if you don't know it, we don't have indigenous Chardonnay in California. All the Chardonnay that's grown in California is from a clone that comes from France. Vitis vinifera comes from France, not from America. We have our own set of vine species, but not Chardonnay, not Merlot, not Cabernet, not Syrah, not Riesling. They're all Vitis vinifera, and they all come from Europe from cuttings. So when you think about it, this is the place, the mother place, where Chardonnay originated and propagated over the centuries. And the monks planted this on the hill of Montrachet, Le Montrachet, the Montrachet. And on one side, you've got Puligny, and the other side, you've got Chassagne. And these two villages produce the greatest white wines of the world. So Le Montrachet is right out of the town of Puligny. Batard is right up there. Criots, Batard, Montrachet are all in that little area there. And these are mineral-driven, chalky, marly soils. There's uplift there where this limestone is lifted up. France was underwater for millennium, right? And because of that, there's a base of starfish limestone, broken shellfish, and chalk. You've seen the cliffs of Dover. You've seen the vineyards of Champagne. They're chalk. And that chalk gives you that minerality. It's great, great, great for Chardonnay. And that with a little bit of clay, boom, we got it going on here, right? Perfect exposure and old vine. So this is Paul Pernod's Puligny-Montrachet, 2017. And funny enough, Paul Pernod actually sold wine to Drouhin long ago. So this actually could be the same wine that I drank in 1982, Puligny-Montrachet. This wine is, the vines are about 40 plus years old here. Actually, he sells almost 80% of his fruit, so he only keeps the very best of it. And this beautiful wine. So let's go back and smell this again. Again, if I go fruit on this now I'm getting kind of a baked apple, baked pear, maybe a little bit of pie crust on this one here. This is almost like apple pie. There's a lemon and lime thing here, but there's that little whiff of like reductivity, which is sulfur, which kind of smells like smoke, smells like rock in a way, right? So the earth, again, is chalky, it's minerality, it's hard rock, it's, you ever smell hard rocks in the rain? It kind of smells like that. The wood, there's a vanilla and a cinnamon effect on this wine, but not in your face, right? This isn't like blowing you away with wood chips, or this isn't like, I can't believe it's butter either, right? You ever smell something like American Chardonnays and it smells like diacetyl, fake popcorn? You don't have that going on here, right? And if you whack this thing really hard, it's not that hot, right? Now, American Chardonnay, like if we were blind tasting this, most American Chardonnays are going to be 15, 16% alcohol. Right? So they're going to cry me out. And, I find American Chardonnay is really good for lobster and butter and crab and butter. And sometimes in my house, I don't even use butter. I just heat up Chardonnay and dip the crab in that. It's awesome. So it's got this beautiful chalky, earthy minerality. Fruit, earth, wood, flowers. This to me is just a little bit lifted, maybe a little bit of fresh white rose, but not too much in your face. Again, the spices are mainly wood spices here, and then on the herbs, on the back end, there's just a little whiff of green here, but not too much in your face, right? This is mainly about the minerality and the chalkiness to it, and again, a little bit of reductivity, which you see oftentimes in where they have tight barrels and things like that. So the sulfites get kind of trapped in there for a while, and that's why I always decant my white Burgundies, by the way. You guys drink white Burgundy, throw them in a decanter, they'll get better in an hour. They'll blow you away. And don't drink them too cold because you mute them. Excuse me. On the palate, medium plus in acid. This is fairly tart, but it's not sour, right? Alcohol, about 13.5. Let's see what this Albarino was, by the way. They have a 1.5 on the bottle to play with. And sometimes the bottles lie. It says 13 on there. So I was pretty close on that. I think this one's about 13.5. And that's what it says, 13.5. And again, you get good at that after a while because if you do it in the same way, you can go, this is higher or lower than what I tasted before. And that's really the whole thing. And then you have to believe in yourself. when you're blind tasting and you don't know what the wine is, you know, what happens to us all, like, and I don't know if you, how many people have taken wine tests before? They suck, don't they? You know, as adults, do we like being tested? No, we don't. No, we don't. We don't like being tested, and when you're under the microscope, it's not cool. But we have this thing where we go, I don't know what it is, and then they go, well, Jay thinks I'm stupid. Well, I'm actually the one that's stupid. I know that for a fact. But what I tell people is I just pick up the wine and go, ladies and gentlemen, I have no idea what this wine is. But then I go, what I can tell you is that this has medium plus acidity. This wine is seen in oak barrel. This wine is tart. This wine is not hot. This wine has A, B, C, and D. Therefore, again, a game of logic, it should be A, B, C, or D. So on this particular wine, now if you pinch this in your throat like I told you to do before with the Albarino and exhale, you'll see now that you have vanilla, cinnamon, cream, nutmeg. It's rich, and you really get that feeling of oak in your throat, right? You can really feel it, and after a while you can go, okay, this guy used oak, but he's not using 100% new French oak. You know, he's probably using, you know, 40% maybe used barrels here, you know, maybe 2-year-old barrels, because this wine isn't dominated. This wine's about the fruit and the rock, but there's that oak accent behind it, right? So you can go, well, who does that? Who does that? And you can ask yourself, okay, now how many different varietals get oak that I said, right? So we have Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Viognier, Marsanne Roussanne, White Chateauneuf top, maybe Vero. So you have to look at those things and you go, okay, out of those, which ones are tart? 2, Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. So for me, like what people really get tricked on a lot of times is white Bordeaux. I'd love putting white Bordeaux in there. Because everybody calls it white Burgundy all the time, but they don't look for the clues. So white Bordeaux is Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. The Semillon is waxy, thick. Oftentimes it's reductive. You almost get a slight red onion smell to it. So look for onion skin for white Bordeaux. It's really a good little tell. So I'm going to look for the tell there. And Sauvignon Blanc's got a different attack than Chardonnay. Sauvignon Blanc hits your palate, go bam! And it goes, next time you taste the Sauvignon Blanc, just goes, but it's like a lime sweet tart in a way. It hits your palate and just goes, poof, whereas Chardonnay goes, roof. It's got a resinous hit when you put it, like you put this in your mouth, this is quality, right? That's a beautiful glass of wine. It's rich, it's long. This is the kind of wine I like to drink. I like drinking white Burgundy. I like drinking red Burgundy. I like drinking Bordeaux. You know, I've been to Bordeaux many times. I was there this spring. I import Bordeaux for our company. I got a great passion for it. And I've done really well with it. I've traded it over the years. I'll buy and sell it. If you guys got old Bordeaux in your house, it's probably way past its peak. I'll take it off your hands. Give you a fair price. Give you a fair price. No worries about that. But you know, I like European wines. I like wine. Like I say, I'll drink anything. I'll just drink less of it if it's still good, right? You got box wine. I come over to your house and you got the old, you know, box, the big bowl box there. I'll have some. I probably won't drain the whole box, but if you have the good, I'll probably stay a little bit longer. So anyway, this is kind of the wine that I really love. This is beautiful wine with all sorts of foods because it's not, you know, it's not too alcoholic. It's not too oaky. It goes really well with first courses. You know, I'm also a big fan of Spanish wines. I love the wines of Spain. I just dig wine in general. But this is really fun wine. It's really long. You guys like it? Should we bang this one? Should we go to the red wine? I'm going to blind you guys on the next red wine. So a lot of times, you know, when I get students in, some of them can't taste acid correctly. Some of them can't taste alcohol correctly. Some of them can't taste oak correctly. And if you can't dissimulate those things, you can't taste that well. So what I do is I give you exercises to fix you on those things. Some people can't make a decision. So I have actually 2 different ways of looking at tasting. There's tasting in. So tasting in is being able to identify how tart this is, how much oak this is, how much alcohol is, and how much tannin there is in a wine. And tasting out is making a decision. And tasting out is really, really difficult for some people. They go, well, it could be Sangiovese, and it could be Tempranillo, and it could be Northern Rhone, and it's like, it's American Pinot. You know, it's just like, It's like, what? Is that a logical decision? You know, and I see this all the time. It's like, ah, and then they just go somewhere. It's like, he did it, hang him, hang him. And I go, no, you didn't cross-examine your witnesses. So what I do is when I get something that's similar, like Tempranillo, Sangiovese, Northern Rhone, they all have oak. They're all red-fruited. They're all on the tart side. And I go, all right, let's bring the suspects in, and let's see if they have, let's cross-examine our witnesses. So I'm going to have to tell myself, what do I know about Mr. Tempranillo? Well, Mr. Tempranillo, like the wine of Rioja, oftentimes smells like soy sauce, oftentimes smells like hoisin, oftentimes smells like fresh churned earth. Typically, it's medium plus alcohol, medium plus tannin, and medium plus acidity, but not always, because Tempranillo is one of those grapes that has a spectrum, right? You guys ever drink Tempranillo from Ribera del Duero or Muga or something like that? I mean, we'll see these wines. That will be, 15 plus alcohol, black, and a new French oak. But they still taste like Tempranillo. You just have to think like that. If you think that Tempranillo is all red-fruited and tart, it's not, because they can go the other way. What do you know about Mr. Northern Rhone? Syrah from the Northern Rhone, to me, smells like juniper. It smells like sage. Almost always get somewhat of a feral, bloody smell to it, right? So some people say bacon, meat, and those things. So I'm going to bring them in, and I go, do I smell any game or blood in this? Do I get any farrow with this? And you think about the Northern Rhone as well, they don't use a lot of oak. So the tell is the fact that they don't use oak. Now, Gigal with the Lalas use, 48 months, 42 months barrique. That is not the typical Northern Rhone Syrah. Most Saint Joseph, most Cornas, most Côte Rôtie does not get a lot of oak. They use big vessels. So you can do the swallow test and ask yourself, is this in a new barrel? If it does, probably not from the Northern Rhone, right? And Syrah's tart, by the way. And Syrah tastes like blueberries. Sangiovese oftentimes has a volatile acidity, right? So does Nebbiolo. So the two of them have this, you guys know what volatile acidity is. It smells like nail polish, smells like paint thinner, smells like balsamic vinegar. So you get this slight balsamic scent. And if you don't get it, it may not be Sangiovese or Nebbiolo. Now, modern Chianti, I've been tricked on those in the last couple of weeks, and I actually logicked them out. Because modern Chianti oftentimes has Cabernet or Syrah in it, and they use French oak, and it's clean. So now there's no VA. So you think about old Chianti, it was almost always orange, almost always sour. You go, well, it's got VA, it's got tomato leaf. This is classic. But you take a modern one, you put Syrah or Cabernet, you put it in a French oak barrel, you macerate it a little bit, it turns black. It's 15% alcohol, and then all of a sudden you go, well, maybe this is Bordeaux, right? But Bordeaux smells like mint. Like every single cab's got mint. So if it doesn't have mint, probably not cab, right? Cabernet is high in tannin. So you have to go, what are the most tannic grapes in the world? Cabernet Sauvignon, Nebbiolo, Mourvedre are tannic as could be. They'll rip your face off. And we'll talk about tannin when we get to this red wine here. It's a little bit different. So acid makes your mouth water. Tannin makes your mouth dry. So you go, how tannic is this? So I'm going to bring all the clues in, and I'm going to cross-examine my witnesses. And then I'm going to pick someone out of logic, not emotion. And if you can walk away from this emotional thing where like, he did it. It's him. And because we can't figure it out. If you can't figure it out, you miss somebody, right? So if I get, let's say, a tart red wine from Europe, I go, okay, it's a tart red wine. I know it's European because it's low alcohol and it's tart. I have to bring in Mr. Tempranillo from Spain. I have to bring in Mr. Sangiovese from Italy, Mr. Nebbiolo from Italy, Mr. Gamay from Beaujolais, Mr. Pinot Noir from Burgundy, and Mr. Cabernet Franc from the Loire Valley, and Mr. Syrah. So you ever get one of these red? I get tricked on those ones as well. Like a tart Syrah from the Northern Rhone can taste like a lot of things, right? You think they're blue, they're not. They can be very red. So Syrah can go from being light red to black blue. So you have to think about that, and that's tasting out, right? So you could be the greatest taster in the world, but if you can't logic your way out of the box, you're going to fail. And there's a lot of people that can't make a decision. They just freak, and they cry. I've had students cry at my table, and it's just like, what are you crying here for? This isn't the test, and the bottom line is I'm helping them. There's no need to cry if you got the wine wrong. You can cry if the wine's great. Like again, I go, this is because, thank you, Jay, for opening these fantastic wines. Anyway, That's pretty good. I like it. All right. Now we got the last wine, the red wine. Okay, so what I do with red wines is I use the thumb technique to start with. Now, you guys have plastic glasses, but I ask myself, can I see my thumb through this glass or not? So is this an opaque varietal or is it a translucent varietal? Now, I don't have much wine here, but this wine is pretty opaque. But let's say dark translucent, right? You can kind of see the outline of your thumb, but you can't necessarily see your thumbnail, right? If we do the, again, you guys have different glasses. If you do the viscosity test on this one sets up way high in my glass, and that's going to set. Now, if you watch these wines, this wine's got the most alcohol of anything we've tasted today, right? When you look at a red wine, too, you look at the meniscus, which is the band around the outside, and you ask yourself, is it pinky orange, or is it, is this starting to turn orange, or is it blue, right? And this one's still kind of pink there, but there's a slight orange band. It's really kind of tell, but it looks like it's got a year or two aging on it to me, right? It isn't brand new. But if you see purple pink around the outside, it's a baby. And if you start to see it turning orange, it's a little bit older. And really old wines, sometimes they'll get a blue core, and then they'll fade to orange. Certain wines are completely orange. Certain wines oxidize very easily. Grenache oxidizes super easy. Sangiovese can be almost pure orange, and Nebbiolo can be almost pure orange right off the bat. But again, Sangiovese is tricked because it can be blended. So Brunello looks different than Chianti. You got to remember that. Brunello is pure Sangiovese Grosso, and Chianti can have other things that are bluer bottled in with them. Again, they can also, just because Pinot Noir is translucent, but they can cold macerate it, right? You guys know what maceration is, right? Mm-hmm. It's the grapes sit in solution. They suck color out. It's like cherries in a bar, right? They got vodka. They put cherries in it. Pretty soon it turns red, right? Because the vodka is sucking the color out of the cherries and making the whole solution red. So if they want to take a thin-skinned grape, they can turn the temperature down in the fermentation tank and let it soak for a month if they want and just turn it black. Or in America, they can dye it. We like dark wine. A lot of the Pinot, ever see some of the Pinots we see in America? They're black. So you can't just go, it's not Pinot, it's not the right. I get my guy go, dude, it can't be that because it's the wrong color. I go, so really? So there's a bloody trail all the way to my house, and there's a note on the door that says not home, and you go arrest the neighbor, right? Because he didn't like the color. So all the clues led you there. You go, nope, wrong color, can't be Pinot. So you have to open your mind up and go, yes, it could be. Now, Cabernet is usually black, but it can be translucent as well. So we have to think through the box a little bit. Let's smell this guy. Is this really fruit forward or is it earthy? Is this a fruit basket or is this... By the way, this is my brother Joel here. He's my older brother. He's smarter than me. But not in wine. What fruit do you smell, Joel? Well, like I catch everybody, every single red wine's got cherry. So you go, I got cherry. And I go, dude, you nailed it. So if you think about it, like every red wine's got cherry and every white wine's got lemon of some sort, right? There's always citrus in all wines and there's acidity there. But to me, this is kind of bright cherry. This is baked cherry. This is red plum. This is blackberry. Maybe even a little bit of black currant here. This is black, but it doesn't seem like it's in your face. This is tearing me. This is I'm guessing this is maybe 14.2. I'm not getting big tears, but I'm getting tears in my face here. So this wine's the hottest wine we've had so far. I smell a beautiful, right off the bat, I get really a lot of baking spice here. There's baking spice here, and there's that fresh cinnamon and vanilla thing going on, but I get a lot of cinnamon here. And I get this kind of cardamom mace kind of smell on it. So the fruit to me is again, the plum, the cherry. There's a little bit of currant, all red, but there's black fruit as well. It's kind of red and black fruit. Earth to me, this has kind of a dusty, flory, and we have two different kinds of earth in wine. We have hard rock, so shale and slate and rock, and then we have loam, turned dust. They talk about Rutherford dust, right? They talk about forest floor. So there's organic earth that's broken down, and there's inorganic earth that's rocky. And I always get like a little bit of both. There's almost a little bit of like limestone here and a little bit of turned earth on this wine. Wood, I certainly get a vanilla component in this wine. This wine's seen a barrel. I can guarantee you it's seen a barrel. You can just smell it unless they oak chipped it, which is possible. I mean, in certain countries, you have to go, okay, we haven't got there yet, but it isn't that hot, and it's not a fruit basket, right? This isn't just blowing fruit, right? This is like, this is subtle and this is complex, right? Smells pretty good, right? Fruit, earth, wood. Flowers here, these are to me, they're fresh roses and fresh violets. Maybe a titch of potpourri here, but really more fresh flowers. The spices are certainly baking spices, vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg. And then herbs, this does have herbs. This has spearmint. This has marjoram. This has fresh basil. All right there, but not totally in your face. This has a little bit of black olive to me. It has a little bit of green olive. I love the smell of this wine. It smells rich, and it smells almost a little bit of, Fred Dame would say, animal, animal. It's like a little bit of animal smell, a little bit of leather, right? It's got kind of a, leather smell to it, right? Just a little bit. Palate. I'm just going to do drops. Now, I don't want to kill my mouth. I don't do this stuff, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, when I'm drinking wine at a restaurant. Look at Fletcher over there making all those faces. I just drink stuff, right? And I drink a lot. But when I'm breaking down a wine, I'm going to go, okay, 2 drops in the tongue, bone dry. Bone dry. That's why I'm going to lick of sugar in it at all. And then I'm going to go and do the palate. And I put my tongue up there and I go, that's actually tartar than I thought. If you lift your tongue up, you really get to feel for it. See how much it makes your mouth salivate? You go, wow, that's actually fairly lifted. More than you might think because it's so round, right? But if I was to bite into something, that would be a red plum skin. This is red plum to me. This is red cherry. And this is, it's not sour cherry. This isn't like the most sour cherry, but it's certainly a tart cherry, right? And it isn't a baked cherry. There's a little bit of bakedness, but it's a tartar red fruit there. The currant, the cassis is there, right? That plum is there. There's a little bit of blackberry here on this for fruit. Fruit, earth, wood. Let's swallow this. Pinch it in your throat. And the thing with my method, when I teach it to students, when you get lost, all of a sudden you're like, everybody's looking at me, and I'm going down the wormhole, right? You go, because you start to think everybody's looking at you. You just go back to the method. Fruit, earth, wood. What's the wood right now? And you're back on track. You're back up, and you go, no, I'm not down. I'm fighting away. I'm here. I'm going through this, right? So you think about this. You swallow it. I got chocolate. I got coffee. I got mocha. That is New Barrel. This is New Barrel here. There's smoke, coffee, and when you feel coffee and chocolate and mocha and those kind of things, that's New Wood. There's vanilla and cinnamon on this wine. So I'm thinking barrique here. Somebody put a new small barrel on this guy. It's gone through. So fruit earth wood. Flowers to me are still lifted, fresh, kind of roses and violets, but not in your face. A little bit dried there. Spices, mainly wood spices, but there is a little bit of red licorice, a little bit of black licorice. I get a little bit of balsa, cedar, kind of a cedar thing. I get tobacco on this wine. One thing I didn't talk to you guys about was tannin, okay? So because this is the first red wine. So acid makes your mouth water. Tannin is like the inside of a walnut, right? The inside of a banana, dries your mouth out, right? So what I do is I only put drops up in the front of my mouth. So I do it like mouthwash. I park it up there in my front teeth. And then I go, how sticky is it? And there's certain grapes, like if I can stick my lip up there without sliding it, it's pretty darn tannic, right? Now this one's a creeper. This one's starting to kind of grow on me, but it isn't like the most massively tannic thing. And they got to go, what's the most tannic grapes in the world? I talked about them. Nebbiolo, super, super tannic. Nebbiolo is high, as a matter of fact. High acid, high tannin, high alcohol. Pretty much the only one that has that. Sangiovese can be very tart. Cabernet Sauvignon, very, very tannic, not tart, tannic. So tannin, Mourvedre, what you get from Bandol down south, super tannic. And you get that sometimes with Chateauneuf du Pape. So this is fairly tannic, but it's almost kind of stemmy in a way and green in a way too. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's stem inclusion, maybe not, but there's kind of a stemminess, a greenness here, but it isn't like the most tannic thing I've anywhere. I'm going to go strong, medium plus on the tannins. So fruit, earth, wood, flowers, we talked about, spices there, and then that herbal thing. I still get mint, I get olive, but it's not like in-your-face mint. The finish is long, the quality is high. This is a delicious glass of wine. What is it? Who's the hero? Syrah. Okay, Syrah from where? Okay, who else?
Cabernet.
From where?
It's California, Napa.
Okay, who else?
Nebbiolo.
From where?
Burl.
Okay, who else? Okay, so this is what you do. Again, it's a game of logic, right? So which grapes in the world see new French oak? Okay, let's just look at it that way. How many grapes in the world get new French oak? Now, Syrah from the Northern Rhone can. I talked about that it usually doesn't, but it can. So let's put it in the mix. Is this a dark-skinned varietal or a thin-skinned varietal? It's pretty dark. So let's go with that way. What are the dark-skinned varietals? Syrah, Cabernet, Cabernet Franc, Carmenere, Merlot, Malbec, Mourvedre. Mourvedre's black, by the way, okay? There's 7 of them, all right? So now let's go, who uses new oak? Cabernet, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Syrah, Carmenere, Merlot, Tempranillo. Okay, so they're all in the mix, right? So then we go, okay, let's bring all our suspects in. Let's bring in Mr. Carmenere. Mr. Carmenere from Chile. You guys ever take one of those? Oh, yeah. Super, super herbal. The tell for me, it smells like a hot grilled jalapeno. I mean, it's got this crazy grilled jalapeno thing. I go, maybe. Maybe that's, you can go, yeah, I got that. It's Carmenere from Chile. But it's usually, this is pretty quality, right? You go, I think Mr. Carmenere can go. What do we know about Mr. Cab Franc? Well, Cab Franc's herbal, and he's rich, and you go, well, could be Cab Franc. Is this Cab Franc from the Loire? Is this from Northern with no oak on it, like your Chinon or Bourguignon? No, it's not tart enough. It's too rich, it's too round. There's too much oak on here. Is this money? You think this is cheap wine? You think this is garbage? This is good, okay? I don't know if you guys know it or not, but this wine is pretty good. It's got quality. Someone spent some money. So you go, okay, what do I know about Mr. Malbec? Mr. Malbec's purple. Mr. Malbec tastes like plum skin. Mr. Malbec is tart, and you go, well, God, I guess it could be, but it's sure pretty damn best Malbec I read. I don't think this is Malbec, so I'm going to let him go. Okay? What about Mr. Syrah? Syrah is the tartest of all those guys. Is this really sour? Do I get blueberry? Because you almost always get blueberry with Syrah. I don't get any blueberry here, so I'm going to let that one go. So now I'm down to Mr. who? Mr. Cabernet Franc, and Mr. Merlot. What do I know about Mr. Cabernet? What did I tell you about Mr. Cabernet? Mr. Cabernet, and what was the other grape in there that somebody said? Nebbiolo, right? So Nebbiolo is actually thin, it's really sour, and it's really tart, so I'm going to let that one go. So I'm down now to Cabernet, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot. And you go, where do they make those wines now? Okay, so what do I know about those wines? Well, Mr. Cabernet is the most tannic beast in the world. It's got a really small grape, a really thick skin, and it's super tannic. And I tasted this, and it was only medium plus in tannin, right? So I go, what about Mr. Merlot or Mr. Cab Franc? Well, Mr. Merlot's got some red fruit to it, okay? Mr. Cab Franc's got some herb to it. And you go, well, is that that? And then you go, well, where do they make these grape varietals? California and where else? Bordeaux. Bordeaux. Okay. So if this was from California, where do you think the alcohol would be? High. Game of logic. Is this 15.5? I'm thinking it's 14.5. Okay, I think it's 14.5, but I don't think it's 15.5. I don't think the tannin's that high. So I'm thinking, and I get the tobacco, I get the cedar, I get the cigar box. I like Bordeaux with this. I think this tastes like Bordeaux to me. I drink a lot of Bordeaux, and I know what the wine is. So I'm going to take it there, and I'm going to ask myself, is this from the left bank or the right bank? Do I think this is Cabernet dominated, or I think it's Merlot dominated? And in actuality, it's the Merlot dominated Bordeaux. It's Chateau Bardot from Saint-Emilion, 2014. This is a really cool wine. This is a beautiful property in the Saint-Emilion Plateau next to Pavie-McCann and Troplong Mondo. It is all organic. It's actually a green vineyard. They have solar panels. They have water recycling. They have a windmill that covers power. They actually use 5% micro vinification. You guys know what that is? They actually barrel ferment red wine in a barrel. And you go, well, how do they do that? They actually put the skins and the juice in a barrel. And the first time I ever saw that, they've got a little, the ones that I've seen have a little trough with wheels on them. And what they do is they put a certain amount of juice and skins in the barrel, and it actually goes through fermentation in the barrel. And then every 6 hours or so, they rotate the barrel on the little wheels. So some guy comes up, it's almost like a Riddler. He turns it over and it sloshes over and it gets the pump over in the barrel. So it's micro-vinification. They have 5% of that. This is Saint-Emilion Grand Cru Cassé, or Grand Cru 2014. The alcohol in the bottle is 14.5, it says. And you might be a little bit more than that, but I was pretty much on with that guy. Blend on this is 87 Merlot and 12.7 Cab Franc. So that Cab Franc comes through. So you see how good you guys are now? Now you're all experts. You can all go home at the greatest wine tasters in the world. And, you know, I thank you for putting up with me. Listen to my story. I want you to keep supporting Somm Films. I want you to support the Somm Foundation. We would love your donations. You know, we give away, again, scholarships to people in the industry. And if you're in the industry and you want to go on our website and look for Somm Foundation, because we have trips all the time, and we give away money if you're taking classes. And again, we're gonna release this digital wine diagram in the next 6 months. It's gonna blow your mind. Keep supporting Somm TV, and thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it.